Okay. My name is Claudia Kane. I'm the director at Scoville Library. And I think if we're all need some good news these days, and I think that this program is going to be the good news that we need. So the program today is the result of an organization called Puppies Behind Bars, which brought together today's speakers. And Puppies Behind Bars trains in prison inmates to raise service dogs for wounded war veterans and first responders, as well as explosive detection canines for law enforcement. So today's program is called A Dog's Journey, From Prison to Walking the Beat, How Dogs Are Transforming Community Policing. And today's speakers are our moderator, Gloria Gilbert Stoga, who is a Lakeville resident, and she founded Puppies Behind Bars in 1997, initially to train prison inmates to raise guide dogs for the blind. But as our world changed, so did the types of dogs Puppies Behind Bars raised. They added explosive detection canines in response to the September 11th terrorist attacks, service dogs for veterans in response to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and most currently service dogs for police officers and police departments in response to mass shootings in our country and heightened tensions between police and citizens in some of our nation's cities. And we also have with us today Tawana Anthony. She spent 2010 to 2020 in New York State's only maximum security prison for women on a charge of assault with a deadly instrument. And 5 years into her sentence, she overcame her fear of dogs and applied to become part of the Puppies Behind Bars program. She did so because she felt that PBB, I can't say that, would teach her responsibility, empathy, compassion, and how to work effectively in a group. And we can say that she succeeded wildly, for when she was paroled in October 2020, she was offered a full-time job at PBB, where she works today as an administrative assistant. And then we have Heather McClelland, who has been with the town of Groton Police Department for the past 9 years and currently serves as the community policing officer. So she started the police service dog program in 2019 and is currently paired with her partner Chase, who I happen to know is here today, and Tawana has now vanished. I'm sure she'll be back. Or we certainly hope she'll be back. I may have to find her in our list of participants, but we will get there. Anyhow, going back to Heather, her partner Chase, who is here today, was trained and donated to the police department by Puppies Behind Bars. So I'm going to turn this over to Gloria. I'm going to see if I can find Tawana, and I'm going to vanish. So thank you again for being here today. And there will be time for questions after we've heard from these three women. And if you have a question, please put it in the chat and we will do our best to get to you. So enjoy, and I will see you in a little bit.
Thanks, Claudia.
Let me see if...
Hopefully you can find Tawana.
I'm here. No.
Oh, okay. Well, Tawana, that's good. You can hear and we can hear you, but it would be better if we could see you, if that's possible.
Okay. Let me see.
I'm going to find her. And
hopefully, okay. So Heather and Tawana, everybody, thank you very much for coming today. There she is.
Okay.
And I think Claudia is going to spotlight you, Tawana, so you'll kind of be the same size as Heather and me. There you go. Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Claudia and the Scoville Library, and thank you everybody for coming. As Claudia said, Puppies Behind Bars has responded to the changes in our world, in our nation, in our communities. And my particular interest in getting dogs into the hands of police departments started after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. And while I, as everyone else, thought about the victims and their families, I also thought about the first responders and what they must be going through, being witnesses to that scene and going to that school day in, day out to gather material. So I started right after Sandy Hook trying to find police departments who wanted our dogs. And it wasn't until Heather found me that we got a dog into the hands of a police department. For years, police departments either would not respond to my calls or my letters or my emails. That was generally it. Or they responded and more or less said, "You're out of your mind. What are you talking about? We don't want a Labrador retriever in our department." NYPD invited Puppies Behind Bars to a conference that they were having in April of 2019 on police officer suicide, because it certainly is an epidemic in our country that police officers commit suicide. They were having a conference, they invited Puppies Behind Bars, and Heather came up to our table in the back of the room. During the conference, she was out of uniform, but I just, we spoke briefly and I just remember thinking, wow, if anybody could make this happen, this woman with her personality, her energy, she asked all the right questions. So April 2019, as I said, she approached me. By August, which is really fast, so that's April, May, June, July, 4 months later, she was paired with a dog. So some of the questions Heather asked me at NYPD this morning were logistical. What kind of dog, what training, how much does it cost, blah, blah, blah. What I did not have the nerve to tell her, because I thought it would scare her away, was Puppies Behind Bars pays for everything. We donate these fully trained dogs to you. But in order to get one of our dogs, you've got to come to prison for 2 weeks and you've got to work directly with a group of inmates. They're the ones who are going to train you with the dog and hand the dog over to you. And I really thought it would scare her away. So I don't remember how close to August I launched that on you, Heather, but it was my secret for a while. So in August of 2019, Heather was accepted into a class, and now we fast forward to Tawana. Tawana at that point was serving her sentence in the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. And Tawana was what we call the master of ceremonies. Tawana really was the one who oversaw the whole training of Heather and the other participants in the class. So what I'd like today's conversation to be about, and I'm going to turn it over to you guys, is how two people, police officer and inmate, came together over a dog, how your perceptions of each other, what your pre-perceptions were, and how working together changed the perceptions of both of you, and maybe, not to sound too airy-fairy, but maybe even transformed your lives as a result of having your minds open to seeing each other as human beings rather than as the enemy. So Heather, I'm going to start with you. Could you talk a little bit about, we'll talk about what Chase does at the end, but what were your feelings when you knew you had to go into a maximum security prison, and just kind of take it from there, please?
Sure. It was actually nice because initially you invited me to come to a graduation at Fishkill for the class previous to that, so that I could get a sense for what the environment would be like, so I could meet some of the puppy handlers, puppy raisers from the men's correctional facility there. And I also got to meet a lot of the amazing volunteers that come to graduations. And so I got a chance to see really a lot of the inner workings of the organization before I even stepped into Bedford Hills. So that was kind of a nice way to be introduced to the organization. I, like many other police officers, the only real interaction that we would have with an inmate is typically the day they get arrested. And, we are interacting with that individual on likely the worst day of their life, and the changing point in their life. And a lot of times those interactions aren't very positive, or, no one really wants to be part of that. So knowing that going into it, I really wasn't sure what it was going to feel like or look like, or quite honestly, how these women were going to view me, knowing all that going into it. So I was very unsure, and I didn't know what to expect, but I certainly did not expect what I found, which was something pretty amazing. So I guess, yeah, to answer your question, Gloria, I just, I really didn't know what to expect. My expectations, I left kind of open, but what I was met with, I never could have imagined.
Thanks. Tawana, let me turn it to you, and then Heather, we're going to come back to what you were met with. Tawana, being in prison. So you served almost 10 years. What was it like being in prison prior to being in Puppies Behind Bars? What was it like being in Puppies Behind Bars? And then what was it like when you were asked directly to work directly with a police officer coming into prison and trained with your dog, with a dog?
So being in prison is, I'm not really sure how to classify it, but it's like a very dehumanizing experience. So if you are just kind of in general population, which is just like a regular inmate, you're met with, there are all these perceptions about people who are in prison, and you're treated as such always. And you're always reminded that you're in prison and that your rights are limited and your value as a person is limited. And that is one of the reasons why I joined Puppies Behind Bars, because when I would see the raisers and I would see them out for, class or whatever, they were always smiling. And to see people smiling in a place, that for me, for 5 years prior to joining the program was so dismal, was something that I wanted to do. I was, before I joined the program, very afraid of dogs. So that was what my hesitance was. But again, I would see the dogs, and the dogs look happy and the people look happy. So I started to ask questions, and I joined the program. And the first thing that struck me was they ask you your name, and you get conditioned not to have a name in prison. You're known pretty much by a number or your last name. So I gave my last name, and Gloria was like, well, what's your first name? Because that's what we use here. And that was just like, everything changed for me. Like, okay, I'm a person here. And, in the program, once I made that choice, I was just like, this is something that I can do. And not only, to better myself, but probably to help someone else. And so that's kind of the prison aspect of it. When we first heard that, we were going to work directly with police officers, I was afraid. My fellow puppy raisers were afraid. After our puppy class, we went back, we had a conversation about it. And, what we decided was we are pretty much going to be the face of inmates and people in prison, and we were going to put on the best face possible. And we were going to get the word out via police officers that all people in prison are not what you see depicted anywhere else, or what you think about people in prison. So that's pretty much like an overview of everything.
Thanks, Tawana. And you reminded me, you're right. In the interview, I said, why do you want to join? And you said, because the women are smiling and I want to be in a place where I can smile too. So thanks for reminding me of that. So Heather, let's go back to you. So what were your feelings? What were you met with when Tawana and the women met you at the door of our classroom in prison and said, welcome?
Yeah, I mean, the utmost professionalism and passion for what they do. Myself and the other new clients or handlers that were receiving dogs, I think we all came into it kind of thinking that, you, Gloria, and Tito and Nora, who were the other trainers with you, and who were accompanying us throughout the whole time, we thought that you guys would be training us, and the puppy raisers, inmates, would be kind of there to help out. I was totally wrong. Gloria, Tito, and Nora sat in the back of the room, and we were met with Tawana and her big smile and her her confident and, very personable nature. And she got up in front of the room and, started leading the training. And it was pretty amazing to see, how much the women put into the training class that was, 5-6 hours a day for 5 days a week for 2 weeks. And, they ran the show, and Tawana commanded presence up there, and everyone worked as a really well-oiled machine. We were paired up with 1 or 2 other puppy raisers. Each new handler was paired up with 1 or 2 puppy raisers, and they would help us work through some of the commands and some of the lessons that we were learning about, not just how to handle a dog, but the relationship that we're building with that dog while we're getting to know him or her, and as they're getting to know us. And what was really neat was how the puppy raisers kind of intertwined their experience leading up to coming to prison, and now in prison with Puppies Behind Bars, with how they interacted with the dogs and how they brought that into the training that they did with the dogs. Words like trust and interdependency and just these incredible feelings and words that just kind of really capture what it's all about. And I was just incredibly impressed with how well the training was. And then at the end of each session in the prison, we would always sit around in a circle and and tell me a story is one of the favorite commands, where the dog sits in your lap. And we had about, I want to say, maybe 15 dogs total in the class, so everybody's got a dog in their lap. And we talk about some really deep stuff that, as a police officer, we don't, we're not geared to talk about this stuff in our role as a police officer. And so to be able to connect with Tawana and the other women who, in that space, we were all on the same playing field, and we were all on the same level. And, I probably cried more that 2 weeks in those tell me a story sessions than I have before or since. But it was amazing. I to this day, every time I get a chance to tell people about my experience in the prison, I do. And I say it, and I truly mean that it was the best part about this process. I love Chase. I love what I do with her. I love being part of the organization and helping advocate for animals in police departments. But those 2 weeks in the prison, they really changed the way I thought, the way I interact with people that I meet. And it really was, it was really special.
Heather, was there an aha moment where you said, my thoughts have flipped? I see these women not as inmates, but as women, or was it just cumulative? Do you remember?
I don't know that it was necessarily an aha moment, but part of the lessons each day, one puppy raiser will basically read an essay that they wrote about the word of the day. So if it was trust, they talk to the class about what that word means to them in their own life. And hearing some of the stories that brought these women to where they are is really eye-opening. And it was hard for me not to say, I could be right in this position had I made one mistake or one decision different than the path that I made. And I also think there's luck that goes along with it, hearing about, someone who was, in a car accident and charged with a DUI and lost one of her best friends. Not many of us can say that we haven't been in a position where we've probably had too much to drink and made a poor decision. And, in my former days, I can say that that could have been me, and I think that's what really kind of struck home with me, that there were, there was a very thin line between us. You know, it was an extremely thin line, and their experiences and the trauma that they had handled and dealt with, not just in prison, but throughout their lives. You know, the way they handle it kind of helped me think about the way I handle some of the things that I see as a police officer and handling those kind of traumas, and making the best of it, because that's what these women are doing, is they're making the best of it, and they're doing it so that somebody else can have a better day and have a better life. So that was a pretty amazing kind of understanding for me.
Thank you. Tawana, you've talked at graduations in prison about the path that led you to serving almost 10 years in a maximum security prison. And Heather just talked about that, you know, her eyes being open to the backstories of you and other women in the program. Would you talk a little bit about who you were when you were arrested, and then how you decided to spend your time in prison becoming a productive citizen and somebody who should be returned to society and be successful, you know, having taken those 10 years and done something with them. So who were you when you were arrested? What led up to that?
So when I was arrested, I had become a person who wanted to create my own rules and wanted to do things the way that I wanted to do them. Because, you know, when I say this, and I don't say this to say this is why or to try to justify my actions, but my experience in my life leading up to that incarceration were just like, if it felt like I didn't have many options. And so because I didn't have many options, I chose to kind of create options for myself. And those options were not always the smartest. You know, if you don't have not necessarily skills, or don't know that you have certain skills, or you don't know that there's certain opportunities, then you know, you can, if there's no one saying, you know, this is an option for you, then you think that the situation that you're in or the situations that you're faced with is your only option. And so I pretty much followed the path of the people that I was around and, you know, created my own way. But in that way, I became such a bitter person, and I was so disconnected from the world. I was definitely not a person that would have, at that moment, would have wanted to have any type of engagement with any law enforcement, anyone from authority, because, you know, like you said earlier, it was like, this was the enemy, you know, this is the person you don't talk to. This is the person, even if you're in trouble, you won't go to for help. And when I got incarcerated and I realized that I was going to do an extensive sentence, before I came actually to prison, I was in jail, and that's, you know, you're going through the process of trial and everything. And I would tell myself, you know, you have an option, and your option is either to do your 10 years, keep your head down and get through it and get out, or you can do something and make a difference. And when I would realize, when it was just me, is that I didn't want to be that person anymore. I didn't want to make opportunities. I wanted to take opportunities that were available. I wanted to be more educated. I wanted to learn more about living life the way that I guess normal people live life. And so, you know, I used my time in prison to do it, because in prison, you don't have anything to focus on but yourself. You don't have to worry about bills. You don't have to worry about your children. You really, really have time to just focus on yourself. And, you know, I did that. I got an education. I started doing, you know, everything that was positive. I kind of try to immerse myself in it. And slowly, you know, there's a term, and it's fake it till you make it. And initially, you know, it was just like, I'm going to do this because this is what, you know, I think should be done. And then I started to notice that I would not react to situations the same. I would not think about situations the same. And I realized that I could trust people, even people in authority, even in prison, where there were all sorts of people saying, this is where you belong and this is where you should stay.
Thanks, Tawana. So let me take it, you too. So Tawana, you just said something that I mean, Heather, probably we all know that you did see, you grew up in New York City, right? You were living in New York, and you did see police as the enemy. And even if you needed help, the last person you were going to approach was a cop.
Yes.
So summer of 2020 was pretty horrible around the country, certainly for police officers. And it's still tough being a police officer in America today. Could you two take your experiences and how Tawana, could you tell people that cops can be trusted and that they are individual people just like we all are? Heather, with your dog Chase, how are you approaching people, or how do people see you differently and maybe would come up to you and say, I need help, or ask a question, or just talk to you when before you had the dog and you were just a cop in uniform, they didn't want to approach? I mean,
So what I'll say is I met Heather kind of before, like the summer before, everything happened, like the protests and everything. And so I had my perception of law enforcement had already changed, and my perception had changed because of Heather. Because what I realized first is that there were more similarities than differences between us, not just, I was looking at myself at that moment in the context of inmate. And I realized that, Heather would say, I'm a police officer and we don't show emotions. We have to keep everything inside. And I was saying, I'm an inmate and we don't show emotions and we have to keep everything inside. That's a sign of weakness. And we were both two people who were like, well, screw that. I'm going to let people in. I'm going to shed these tears. I'm going to tell you about myself. And so when things happened and I would speak to my family on the outside, the most, I could actually say like, well, I spent 2 weeks with an officer, and the way you look at me, and I would ask them, I would say, well, how do you see me? What do you think about me being in prison? And they're like, but you're my sister, you're my friend, you're my cousin. And I was like, and so is that officer. That's someone's sister, that's someone's friend, that's someone's cousin. And you never know. And that's what I say. I say, you never know what could be happening in a moment of crisis. That's kind of how I took it, that every situation is different. I feel like those situations were more heightened and highlighted at the moment, but it was a generalization that I had already started to say, this is not right. We don't all want to be generalized as one thing. I don't want to be, as an inmate, when I was an inmate, I don't want to be the inmate that is generalized with the inmate that's always in trouble. And the same with, an officer who is really doing and loving their job and just trying to keep people safe should not be grouped into the same category as the officer who is abusing his authority. So.
thanks, Tawana.
Yeah.
Heather?
And I will say, I like the idea that I was able to come out of training and meeting, 14 fabulous women that I never would have crossed paths with otherwise, and being able to share my experience with my coworkers, some folks who probably were, questioning why are you going into prison to do this? Why can't you do it through another program? What's the benefit of that? Why would you want to do that? So I was able to really kind of give that experience to them, and I think maybe open the door a little bit, even just for conversation about, what it was like, and the passion and professionalism that I saw, and some of the things that brought those women there, are it's a couple decisions, or it's one decision, or it's, poor circumstances. But on the other side of that, I guess what I didn't really realize was kind of what Tawana just said, in that those same conversations that I was having with the folks that I work with and community members about my experience, is that she was doing the same thing. And, you know, the other women in the program were doing the same thing with their family members, about, you know, meeting and you know, I was the only active duty cop, but we had other former law enforcement who were there for dogs as well. And, you know, the opportunity for her and the other puppy raisers to do exactly what she just said, you know, talk to her family members and give a perspective maybe that they hadn't ever had reason to believe, you know, because everybody's experience is different, and everybody's, you know, the way we form our ideas are based on those experiences. So it was a really nice way to really not just make a change in myself, or maybe for Tawana to make a change in herself, but for us to share that with people was really, you know, something I didn't expect either. And, you know, sorry, Gloria, I was just going to say to your question about, you know, the way Chase kind of changes perceptions in our town. You know, when I walk around town, and we have some of our Groton friends here tonight, I go into the library, or I go into the senior center with her, or just, you know, walk around downtown. People see the dog first. They see her. A lot of times they don't even, you know, they don't see the uniform first, and it allows me to have conversations with people that I think I probably wouldn't be able to have otherwise, because who wants to just approach a cop and start talking to them? Typically, if I were to walk into the senior center, I would get, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. So to have a dog changes everything, and to have a dog like her, who is so well trained, so empathetic, you know, she reads people, and she's able to give some, you know, some compassion and cuddliness to people that need it sometimes. The other thing that she does for us is, you know, I spend a lot of time in the school system, and, you know, we teach DARE to fifth graders. We're in the middle school, we're in the high school, 6 of the elementary schools that we have in town. Being able to interact with kids is huge. And I think, you know, the more we can start those positive relationships early on, I think the better. And it's not necessarily just seeing a cop in a good light. It's about us talking to kids, you know, truly understanding where they're coming from, the challenges that they have, and figuring out ways to make things better. Because it's not just a one-sided conversation. It's not just, you know, look at me, I'm a human and I'm not bad. It's trying to truly get into it and have conversations with kids that are gonna hopefully, you know, make a difference as they get older and you know, start getting out there into the world and really figuring out their own path.
Thanks, Heather. I think we're going to open it to questions quite soon, but I know one of the questions is going to be, what happens to dogs that don't make it in the program? And we have joining us right now, and I'm going to start crying, one of the last dogs that Tawana trained, Peyton. Can you see her?
Oh my.
He's right here.
Hey, so talk to her, Tawana.
Hey, hi, Peyton. Hey, hi.
So Peyton was released as a pet and adopted, and she's living in Kent.
Hi,
So she's
Peyton.
living close by. They should talk to her again, Tawana. I think
Hi,
she's.
baby. Hi, girly. Hello, little girl. Yay. That's nice.
So a cameo appearance from the dog. Thank you, guys. That Tawana.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tawana.
Thank you, Tawana. We're keeping her safe, and she's a great
She's a lovely dog.
friend. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thanks, guys. Bye, Peyton. So Claudia, we'll turn it over to you if there are questions for Heather.
Yes. So if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. We did have one question that came in via email, which is, what are the percentage of dogs that go through the program that go on to have careers?
It varies. The bomb sniffing dogs, almost 90%. The service dogs, less than 50%. For service dogs, it's a much more rigorous training, and we're asking them to, in a way, not be as much dog as they are. And the bomb sniffing dogs can just be a full-fledged Labrador who finds something and gets fed for finding it. So it's easier to be a bomb sniffing dog than a service dog.
And do you always use Labradors? I know they're very food motivated, putting it kindly.
We do, and in part, it's what Heather said. I mean, Heather, if you were walking down the street with a different breed, you might not be as accessible, right? Do you want to?
Sure. Yeah, and I think differentiating between, the traditional Shepherd, Malinois, police dual purpose dog, which is trained to not just sniff things out, but bite and apprehend, suspects. Having a Labrador, I think people relate that to a family dog, and so I think it definitely helps the perception.
And I'll just keep asking questions. So how do you determine, like a service dog, which one is going to go to a police department, or which one's going to go to a veteran, or how do you make that decision?
Did you correct it?
For a veteran who has post-traumatic stress, that's a dog that we want who's really going to align him or herself to one person. A dog for a police department, we want to be really friendly and can go up to a lot of people and absorb the stress of a lot of people rather than just the person they're assigned to. I mean, Chase for Heather, I'm sure lots of times she has relieved stress for your fellow officers, and she's happy to leave you and to go and work her magic with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. We do incident debriefs for major incidents where first responders have gone to a major car accident or fatalities and stuff like that, and we do debriefs, and she's part of that debriefing and de-stressing where there's multiple people in the room, usually 5 to 20 people. And she'll go around and I'll kind of let her off leash to just make her way around the room. She goes and says hello. I've had times where she's, gone up to the person who's speaking and really emotional and just sit at their feet and let them pet her. So it's really special.
Okay, and there is Bridget Kilaki has a question. So if you just want to unmute yourself, Bridget, and ask it or type it in the chat.
I got it. So
Okay.
it's Bridget Kalecki. Nice to meet you. Thanks for all your work with the puppies. So I'm a volunteer on the weekends, and I've kind of had a question for a while, which is, what are the top 2 or 3 things that the people who are getting these dogs on the weekend to socialize should be mindful of that are helpful, and should be mindful of that are a little bit frustrating when you get them back? And by the way,
Tawana question.
I all the time I get compliments when I'm walking around Manhattan and people come up to me and they tell me, oh, your dog's so well behaved. And I say, well, this isn't from my work. I'm just benefiting from the praise. So you should definitely know that.
Thanks. I think one of the first things to remember when you have the dog for the weekend, especially in the city, is that the dog spends most of its time in a more quiet and like country sort of area. So the dogs are usually a little more excited because there's a lot more going on. So I think one thing to remember is like you have to take it a little bit slow. Let's see, something else.
And how did you feel when you were a raiser, when your dog came back from being with a volunteer or spending a weekend in New York? How did it feel when your doggy came home on Sunday night?
So you could almost tell that the dogs were happy, kind of just happy to be back. I know there's limited, not limited, but it's a different type of environment where the dogs get to run and play. And the first thing that we do, we would do when we pick them up from the shuttle, and that's, how they get to the city, is take them to the rec yard to play. And the way they would just like run and run and run. And then after they would kind of like, just maybe like pass out, you could tell that they had experienced kind of like the city was a lot for them,
Yeah.
as it would be for a person who was not from, the city. And I don't know about frustrating frustrating things, like, let me see. And
Oh, that's okay. There are
usually,
no frustrating things
Yeah.
about Puppies Behind Bars.
yeah, no, usually the sitters are so good. They follow the letters. We try to give you as much information as possible to have a successful weekend with the dog. So usually you can't tell anything when they first come back. If anything's happened, it's because, you've told us in your sitter reports, but there's like nothing you can actually tell, like, oh, this happened while they were in the city. Because you can tell they're always so excited to leave that that they're having a great time.
Okay, and our next question is, how long does it take to train an inmate? How long does it take to train a dog? How many people have participated in the program, and are they all women?
So Tawana, you want to take how long it takes to train an inmate?
So let's see. I don't even know how to
Okay.
really answer that.
I'll answer. An inmate has to be in Puppies Behind Bars for at least 8 months before we would give them a puppy. We work in male and female facilities, prisons, but generally maximum and medium security prisons, because after an inmate has raised a dog, we want them to raise another and then another and another, because it takes several years to train an inmate to raise a dog properly. So we want inmates with long sentences, which I know inmates don't want long sentences, but we do. And we've worked with well over 3,000 inmates by now.
Wow. Okay, and does the organization continue to monitor the dogs after they've been placed, or whether they're in service, or whether they're adopted by a family or a person?
Heather, you want to take that? And I don't know if Jonathan, if we can get him back, that he could answer about monitoring. But Heather, do we monitor you?
So we check in biannually, officially with Puppies Behind Bars. Quite honestly, I'm in touch with Gloria and some of the other trainers and a lot of the volunteers all the time, just because it's a lot of fun to be part of the organization. But there is a yearly recertification to make sure that you still have your public access testing and all that kind of stuff. So there are checkups. Once or twice a year, officially.
I don't know, Jonathan, if Jonathan can unmute. Jonathan, your experience, you adopted Peyton as a pet, but your experience of kind of like follow up with the organization?
I think it's been tremendous, but I'm lucky, Gloria, because I live close to you, and Peyton's been able to hang out with other dogs who have been part of the program or are still part of the program, so she still has contact. No, I feel that Peyton is well monitored.
And whenever she's had a little training recidivism, we've had good advice as to how to get her back on track, Tawana. We may not have always been as perfect as we should have been, but we're trying.
Yeah, we had a few issues with recall, I think, at the beginning, Gloria, and then you guys kind of swept in and really helped out at that point. So thanks. That was great.
Thanks.
Great, well, thank you. Where do the dogs come from?
We breed them. We used to buy them for breeders, and we found even the best breeders in the country had lots of medical problems with their dogs. So we started our own breeding program in 2015.
Is that in Lakeville?
It's in Millerton. So
Okay,
very close.
okay. And I'm just going to go through these. What role can a dog like Chase play in changing perceptions and reactions of those who are afraid of dogs? That fear is often learned, whether from family or cultural environment.
Sure. So we actually were invited to a classroom yesterday, Friday, of it was a transitional class program for individuals from the ages of 18 to 24 who have learning disabilities or on the spectrum of some kind. And I was told ahead of time there are a couple kids who just, they're afraid of dogs, or they haven't been around them enough to be comfortable with them. So I let the teachers know, we'll come into the classroom. I'll make sure that she's I'll put her in a down, and I'll let some of the kids who are comfortable with dogs come up and see them pet her and see how she interacts with them. And then eventually we kind of moved around the room. And if kids were comfortable petting her, they would. And if they just wanted her to smell their feet, which is, kind of her way to kind of, explore her world, she did that. And by the end, the two kids who were supposedly terrified of dogs were on the floor with her, petting her and letting her nuzzle them. And that's not always the case, but it's more times than not, just seeing how calm she can be. She's only 1.5 years and she's very calm. She's playful, and she's very receptive to, if I give her a command to really just kind of flop on the ground and settle down, she does it and allows people to play with her. So when people see that, when kids who are afraid of dogs see that, they're very put at ease. So the training is huge. I go back to the puppy raisers and the volunteers too on the weekends. The amount of work that they put into these dogs, it shows. It very much shows. And I always get compliments about how well I've trained her, and can you train my dog? And I always say, I have nothing to do with how good she is, and I've probably only made her worse. So it's a testament to the program for sure.
Well, then I think you've kind of answered this question, Heather, but what was the most difficult part of training? I'm guessing.
Like being in training for those 2 weeks. I'll say, Gloria's tough.
Yeah, you can be honest.
She's tough, and Tawana can tell you too. But what we love about Gloria so much is that, she's so passionate about the program and the people and the dogs, and she's going to give it to you straight, and you're not going to get a sugar-coated answer. You're not going to get, if you're not doing things the way you should, you're going to know about it. And it helps eliminate some of the, for the dog, the misunderstanding about, the command or how you're interacting with them. So in the moment, it might feel kind of harsh, but in the long run, it works, and I think, understanding that was important for me. And Tawana, you can probably speak to how difficult it is just to stay in the program and continue and be there for a long time.
We actually have a question for Tawana. How do you and other puppy raisers deal with the departure of the dogs? It's got to be hard.
So that is the hardest part of being in the program, especially when you've, got this little puppy at 8 weeks, and then at 2 years, you have to say goodbye. I think it's very, very hard. But when you think about, and this was what helped me to think about, our purpose together has been served. Like we're together for a purpose, and now it's time for you to continue, your purpose. Our journey here has ended, and we've had this journey so that your journey can continue. And that was how I would look at it. And being able to participate in a team training and seeing the dogs transform the lives of the individuals that they're connected with makes it so much easier. It does. It's of course it's hard because, we love each and every puppy, but we are so happy when they make it. It's like the best feeling in the world. So it's bittersweet, but it's more sweet than bitter.
Yeah. I volunteer with dogs at a local shelter, and people will say to me, well, how can you do that? You'd want to take them all home. And I feel the same way, that I'm just making it easier for the dog to be adopted. And I get so happy when I hear, because I work with a lot of them who have been there a long time, that, they finally found a home. So I understand. And we have some compliments from somebody who knows Heather and Chase and what a role model Heather has been, and she wants her own Chase when she grows up. That's from Jennifer, who you probably know, Heather. Another
I'll
comment.
pay you later.
Okay. And somebody who has one of the service dogs, Angel, could not ask for more continuing support than I get from PBB. And let's see, here's another one. How do place dogs interact with other dogs they encounter? So I speaking to socialization.
Heather, you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, I can tell you that, you know, part of the conversations that I had with Gloria and the trainers and the women was finding a dog that was going to be able to be in every situation and be comfortable around other dogs. I actually have 2 other dogs at home, you know, non-working, just run-of-the-mill pets. And, you know, it was really important for me to be able to bring a dog back into my house and keep that harmony and be able to go out into the community and interact with people. We have dogs all over the place in Groton. It's a very dog-friendly town. We cover part of Mystic, which is a tourist attraction in the summers mostly. And so having a dog like Chase that's able to really just take on any situation and any dog is huge. So she's done a great job with that.
And I think we have one last question here, and this is for Heather. What is an example of your day as a handler?
So it changes, you know, day to day, but for the most part, what I try to do is I try to make sure that Chase gets some sort of exercise in the morning. Exercise is huge. You know, I aim for 60 total minutes a day, but sometimes that's broken up. And so, you know, we go into work. Chase has, you know, her own little quiet space in the office to settle in while I kind of catch up on emails in the day. And then we start going out into the community, and, you know, we visit the senior center, we go to the schools, we're in the library. We actually have office hours in the library when COVID, you know, loosens back up. We have our own office in there with Miss Jessa in the teen room, and again in the community center. So it's pretty funny that the amount of places that have opened their doors to us is not just because they want an officer in the building, they want Chase in the building. And so they've created offices for us to have office hours. And so we, you know, we really just kind of make our way around town and try to get as, you know, connected with as many people as possible. And honestly, by the end of the day, you know, Chase, after she comes bursting through the door to see her 2 siblings and run around in the backyard, she's, you know, she's exhausted. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I have to actually remind myself, you know, she needs a break every now and then, and she needs to have her own time to decompress. So but it's busy. It's a very, very busy day.
Okay, so actually our final question is going to be for Tawana. And there are many people in the chat who are just so appreciative of this program and all that you do, and you 3 women, and what you've brought to us. But the question for Tawana is, how did you overcome your fear of dogs?
Well, but I mean, we talked about how friendly the dogs in our program are. So I kind of just jump right in. Like, that's just like the type of person I am. I just like feet first straight in. And I figured, I mean, there's no better time to overcome that fear than with the opportunity. Like I said, I was placed with an opportunity and I wanted to make the best of everything. And I figured if I could overcome that, then I could overcome that 10-year sentence.
Yeah.
And I overcame both. So.
Well, I can't thank you enough, and I'm going to try not to cry in my final, but I'm not doing a very good job. But anyhow, I've just found this to be incredibly moving. You know, your stories, you're talking about how we think of people without seeing the whole person, is just really spot on. And thank you for bringing this to everybody who came here today. And I just can't thank you enough. So, and just my final plug for the library. We have a lot of different programs. If you enjoyed this, check out our Facebook page, our Instagram, our website. This program was recorded. It will be on our YouTube channel. So if you have friends who didn't get to make it, or you want to tell them about this amazing organization and these amazing people, you will find it Scoville Memorial Library YouTube channel. So thank you again very much for coming. And the chat is just full of many thank yous and praise for each of you individually and all that you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye,
Okay.
guys.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Heather. Bye, Tawana.
Bye.